It's Welcome to the Resolution.
Welcome to the Resolution. Thanks for joining us. This is a tax resolution cast geared to helping folks gain a better understanding of issues regarding back taxes, on-file returns, and resolution of debt. My name is Stuart Bloomfield, and I'm joined here today by Mr. J. Freeborne, tax expert and enrolled agent.
Hello, Stuart.
How you doing?
I'm good. Let's do this.
Yeah, got another podcast for you today with some information I hope to pass along to you. Hope you guys find something useful from it. Before we go any further, let me say this cast is brought to you by Washington Tax Services. We're a tax resolution company that's been in the business 30 plus years. We're an accredited A-plus rated Better Business Bureau company out of Seattle, Washington, helping people nationwide, worldwide really, with their tax issues. You can find us at WATAX.com or call us at 1-888-282-4697. You can also email us through that website. Again, the website's WATAX.com. Anyway, today's main course, we're just going to explore the world of non-filers and some of the solutions we can maybe provide to them when they give us a call or email us. Kind of a basic, broad look at kinds of non-filer issues. Let me do some quick intros again. Again, my name is Stuart. I'm a tax consultant here. I'm one of the people who you might call in and I may diagnose your issues, maybe give you a little interview, figure out what might be going on with your situation where we can help. And again, this is Jay. He's one of the enrolled agents. Jay, tell us something about yourself.
Licensed tax professional, 22 years of experience. I'm somebody you might hear on the phone if you're calling in for the first time like Stuart, but I also do the cases cradle to grave, and I am empathetic to where you're coming from, and I get what your anxieties are. I've seen them a lot, and I look forward to helping you lower your anxiety.
Excellent. Jay's been here, 3 years now? 4 years?
22 years, dude.
That's right. He's got a lot of experience. So we're going to go to our topic here, and we'll see where we can go. Haven't filed taxes in a while. We get a call.
Most people that are perusing the internet that haven't filed taxes in a while are coming from a number of different places. Anxiety is one of them, as there's a lot of unknowns about being a non-filer, and those unknowns kind of perpetuate themselves as the years go by. We understand the anxiety. There's also some external factors out there in the real world that affect somebody that hasn't filed taxes in a while, and you bump into them, in life. One of them is if you want to get student loans for your kid or yourself, there's a filing requirement there. If you want to buy a house, there's a filing requirement there as well. Usually you're going to owe money. If you're looking to buy a house after filing those, well, that opens up a whole other set of questions. But those are two real-world things that you run into as a non-filer that, depending on how aggressive the IRS is in any given year, the IRS in 2007 and 2017, for example, are different IRS. But it's cyclical when you're running deficits in our federal government, which we are right now. You never know. IRS enforcement is a moving target. It's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. But, for many people, at least historically, in the 90s, 2000s, and the 2010s, the IRS is going to find you eventually. So it's just a matter of luck. And then, of course, for some people who are contacting us that haven't filed a long time, there's just like a guilt. Other people maybe equate paying taxes with being patriotic.
It's in the atmosphere. There's talk. Famous people.
Presidents that aren't disclosing their tax returns brings it on your radar.
Yeah, definitely.
The girlfriend that you might wants to marry you.
Marriage, yeah.
Doesn't, and then, of course, if you live in a community property state, which is most of the West Coast, part of the Midwest, marrying in a community property state is a big deal if your partner hasn't filed or has tax problems.
Can you explain community property tax?
Yeah, community property law in Washington, California, Nevada, Louisiana, Wisconsin, to name a few, basically entails that your debt is your wife's debt is your debt, your assets are her assets are your assets. Then if you resolve a tax problem in a community property state, both your non-liable wife matters in the equation, in the math. So Oregon, which is one of the few states in the West Coast that doesn't guided by community property law, is like the rest of the East Coast, is Commonwealth law, where you can kind of live separate financial lives and resolve your tax problem with a non-liable spouse financially in a separate way. We'll save that for another podcast, but there's a number of ways that people arrive at Washington Tax Service's doorstep, WATAX.com, through our website most often. One of these external things, student loans, buying, or the IRS is proposing tax returns for you in the absence of returns you filed yourself. Those are called substitute for returns, creating a balance due without allowing any of your deductions to get your attention, or just your daggone guilt and anxiety and or social mores of not filing brings you to our doorstep. And our job is to bring you into compliance the easiest, fastest, cheapest way so you can move on and not have your non-filing tax issue rent space in your head, so you can save space in your head for other things like getting married or writing poetry or writing rap songs or
whatever it is,
whatever you want to do,
whatever floats your boat,
or go hiking. So I guess the question is, how do we bring people into compliance? The defining point of that is, are you self-employed or a wage earner? And if you're a wage earner and have had taxes taken out, there's two paths to success. Stay within a 6-year window of compliance, which the IRS generally accepts. That's 2014 to 19 or 15 to 20, 16 to 21, depending on when you're listening to this podcast.
Yes,
right?
Into the future, indeed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
6 years of compliance, the IRS isn't going to bug you ever again. You close the door to all future scrutiny.
Has that window changed?
Some people say 7. It's a real fickle thing. Sometimes an IRS agent says, no, I want 9 years. I've seen that happen. Sometimes we have to go to an IRS agent and say, look, the window of compliance is like 6 years. Is that cool? Yeah, sometimes there's aberrations to that, but generally 6 years.
Washington Tax has been here 30 years.
Right.
In that time period, has that time period changed, or is that pretty
I think
steady?
6 years has been pretty steady.
Yeah. I was just curious. I hadn't.
The IRS stops looking at cases outside a 7-year window, right? They have limited resources to pursue people for everything.
Right.
And as time flies, it's harder to get access to older stuff. In any case, if you're a W-2 person and you want to be a completist and close the door to any future scrutiny, 14 and 19, 15 and 20, 16, 21, 17 and 22 should suffice. You won't get refunds on the 3 years or older returns you file, but you can get refunds or credits on the last 3 or 4 years, depending on when you file. So that leads to the second option for W-2 people. If you don't want to pay extra accounting fees with Washington Tax and you don't have anxiety about not completely filling the compliance window, you can do 3 to 4 years and just focus on the returns that you're going to get refunds on. Ultimately, if you're a W-2, consider those 2 windows of compliance being the maximum 6 or 3 or 4, and you're good to go. Now, if you are not somebody that's in a position of refunds and expect to owe, that will carry you over to the self-employed.
More complicated.
Yeah. There's some things said about being self-employed that aren't out there in the cultural mainstream that I like to just bring up. And that is, if you're an employee, your employer pays a privilege for you to be an employee. And that is, your employer contributes 7.65% of your salary to Social Security and Medicare on your behalf. I mean, that's why the mean capitalistic system that we're in often throws people off employment and into self-contracting because they don't want to pay that 7.65%,
Right.
and also the other benefits that, like health insurance or state requirements. But if you're self-employed, just to reiterate the obvious, you are funding your own Social Security, Medicare.
You don't have an employer doing that for you.
Yes. So some people that find self-employment a hassle also need to realize that their taxes come back to them directly in the form of Social Security benefits and Medicare at some unforeseen date in the future. And yes, conspiracy theorists might say, well, Social Security and Medicare, will it be around? Hey, look, I don't like talking politics on a podcast, but yes, they're going to be around. They're just going to have to adjust and shape and probably raise the Social Security threshold of AGI limitation and have richer people pay more. But anyway, that's for another day. The bottom line is being self-employed means paying federal taxes like everybody else, but also funding your own Social Security and Medicare. So a lot of folks that come to us as self-employed people, where we inquire, that have self-employed non-filers, we ask their age. Because if you're 45 and older with Social Security maybe a little closer on the horizon, starting at 62 to 70, you have a different set of considerations than a 28-year-old self-employed person. And then the other question about being self-employed that we raise with our customers is, how are you doing financially? If you're somebody that has made a living, cleaning houses, you're in one income bracket to somebody that might be a successful attorney or a doctor or an anesthesiologist, or I just got this new one the other day, an animal massager. That's a new career. I just took on a new case. If you're out there, thanks for the business.
An animal? Wait,
she's a massage practitioner for animals.
Pets?
Yes,
like
pet.
dogs mostly?
Yeah. She does massage on dogs.
I'm just thinking of my cat. My cat would not stand massage.
Yeah. I think dogs are her focus.
For hamster? A little hamster massage?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Exactly.
I digress.
No, it's okay. Boy, we've made a list of all the fun self-employed people we've had. And
that's a great one.
I just represented a clown in an audit. Yeah, my son liked that one.
A sad clown or a happy clown?
His business was hurt by that movie.
Shakes the Clown? Oh, you're talking about the Stephen King one?
Yeah. He says, my business was really hurt by it.
I feel bad for the guy.
Yeah, so...
Clowns get a bad rap.
Yeah, totally. He's a wonderful guy. But nonetheless, if you're self-employed and have means and have assets and have savings, there's one take on this. If you're self-employed and you're 28, there's a take on this. If you're self-employed and 55, there's a take on this, right? So let's get into that. If you're a young self-employed person, you have a long time to fund your Social Security. You might consider filing your most recent years and paying what you owe and seeing if the IRS is satisfied by that and continuing to do so in the future. If you're self-employed and make $75 to $1 million a year, you might also consider the same approach. File your most recent 1, 2, 3 years, pay all the taxes due plus the penalties, and move on and just rinse and repeat, keep doing that in the rest of your life. That is an approach that a well-to-do person or a young person can do to get back into the system. It's an imperfect solution. The IRS can always ask for your older years.
That's what I was going to ask. I mean, in those cases, how likely, and I guess maybe
what's the percentage?
Yeah, what's the likelihood that the IRS might, once they see you file those 3, that they would go back?
Let's say it's 2021, and you decide to file your 19 and 20 returns and pay all that you owe. Your window of compliance is 6 years. The IRS could ask for your 18 through 15 returns, basically send you a letter, hey, where are these returns? I would rate the chance of them asking for your 4 older returns or any of those returns, at about 35%. the IRS...
Well, like we were talking about earlier, cyclical with whatever the budget the IRS is
Right.
working with and the
And
number
one
of
of the-
agents that are out there or whatever they're...
Yeah, and one of the divisions
own
of the IRS that we're talking about is the division which creates substitute for returns. They basically is a division that creates returns for people who haven't filed. And we call it substitute for returns, or SFRs. So that's a factor. There's a chance. So I would say today, and we're doing this podcast at the very end of 2019, that, a 35% chance of them asking for one of the older years. Yeah, so if you have means and or are young and want to get back into the system, you can work with Washington Tax Service to get yourself into a bare minimum of compliance to kind of lower your anxiety and then move forward. And as the years go by, the old years go into the rearview mirror, and eventually, once you hit 6 years of compliance, you should completely lower your anxiety. Now, if you're in the category of older, and we'll just say lower middle class self-employed person, a path that you might consider is filing as many returns as you can, owing a ton of money to the IRS, a ton meaning 30 to 250,000, and then making an offer and compromise with the IRS to settle that debt. You want to file as many returns as you can within reason. That might mean beyond the window of compliance, 9 years. Settle that debt with the IRS for pennies on the dollar or dimes or nickels. Get square with the IRS and restore your Social Security credits at a substantial discount.
This is the key to that. You're getting into that time when you're going to need that.
Yeah, as particularly if you're 45 or older and or middle class, lower middle class, maybe even upper middle class person, that is a approach to take if you're self-employed. An avenue of relief, for sure. To qualify for an offer, there's a guy that makes $250,000 a year that qualifies for an offer, but he owes $1 million. Back to that topic, if you're self-employed and older and or not able to pay back what you would owe, hypothetically, then you should file a lot of years, restore your Social Security credits, and do an offer and compromise. And then be current on your taxes going forward. Now, there's a third slot that I'll throw in here. So we've discussed pay your most recent years, file all the years and settle. And then some people just want to do it by the book, back to the W-2s, just do 6 years of compliance, and then wherever the chips fall, you owe money, you'll get into a payment plan or qualify for a settlement or a hardship status. But some people's like, all right, I'm just going to file the 6 years I'm required to file, and whatever I owe, I'll pay it or get into a payment plan and ask for a penalty waiver. So that's self-employed people in a nutshell that haven't filed.
I guess one thing we've been looking at recently is, the expat as well. Is that something you wanted to maybe touch on at all today? That's another kind of non-filer we sometimes see.
Expats are going to be their own specific podcast that we're going to have, but the same rules all apply. The IRS is always changing, how they deal with expats and offering different roads to compliance for them. When we see an expat, we're generally encouraging 6 years of compliance.
Similar to
foreign earned income exclusion means you're not going to owe often, including the foreign tax credit if you make more. If for the wealthier expats, you use both of those, the FEIE and the FTC, to mitigate what you owe. It just depends what you're comfortable with. Sometimes we have expats that just file 3 or 4 years. They just want to go to the U.S. and be able to tell, the customs officer, I filed my last year or my last 3. Makes you feel better to have at least done 3 or 4. But many of our expats will file 6 years and let the chips fall where they may. Mm-hmm. Now, I guess we'll go down a little rabbit hole. If you're an expat and you're self-employed or you're working for a foreign company, you might not owe any income tax due to the FEIE and the FTC.
Different exemptions for specific for
Right.
expats.
Yes, but you might owe Social Security taxes if you live in a country that does not participate in the totalization agreement, which the U.S. has treaties with various countries you contribute to, like the German Social Security system, and not have to contribute to the U.S. system.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not in one of the countries of the totalization agreement, there might be a Social Security obligation that you might owe. But again, 6 years for most expats that haven't been filed in a long time works. So in summary, there's a lot of ways to get yourself back into compliance, a lot of different paths. Sometimes we'll research a client's record and then make a more a nuanced evaluation of what's the right path. After we've posted the IRS power of attorney for you, revisit the topic, which is best for you. And for some people, the last 10 years is kind of a blur, and they want us to look at the wage and income transcripts and start to evaluate. One of the uniquenesses of an office like Washington Tax Services is our institutional knowledge dips into a lot of areas. We're experts at offers and we're experts at non-filers, and so we can kind of see these cases all the way through to the end. And that is, really our advantage in the marketplace of accountants, enrolled agents, and CPAs and tax attorneys is we not only dip our toes, we put our feet fully in both resolving the tax problem and assisting a non-filer in filing tax returns aggressively for people.
So the sort of blended cases can be taken care of in-house, so just under one roof, basically.
Yeah, and we are big picture people, and so we can see your case. We've seen your movie many times, so we can replay the movie to the credits and say, okay, here's where you're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Here's where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there are ways, back to the offer and compromise topic for self-employed people, where we can tell you how much you need to owe the IRS to qualify for a settlement. And that's a pretty rare kind of forecast. I have this self-employed construction guy in Seattle, which is where the Washington Tax's offices are located, where we could figure out how much in tax he needed to owe to qualify for a settlement. That played a factor in how many returns we did for him, actually. And that's a rare kind of perspective.
Right.
But I'm not aware of a lot of accountants and enrolled agents, tax attorneys having that knowledge. So we're pretty proud that we are able to see these cases both ways.
Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to talk about as far as solutions goes, or anything else you want to touch on?
I think email us to the website watax.com through the contact us page, and we'll contact you via email and or phone.
What kind of things should someone say? Does it need to be detailed when they write
what we're
in?
looking for is, when is the last year you filed? Are you self-employed or W-2? Are you living in the U.S. or are you living abroad?
Yeah.
And in what country are you living abroad? And are you getting any notices from the IRS?
That can be kind of a good starting base for us to get back in touch with you and kind of go more into detail.
Just realize that there's solutions for all of your cases.
Yeah.
And you're going to be okay.
That's a good place to leave it, I think.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Cool.
Thanks a lot, Jay.
You're welcome.
All right. Thanks again for joining us for Welcome to the Resolution. I hope you found some useful information in our talk today. A couple notes. Best place to look for further information on our topic today as far as on watax.com/blog post. On our main page, there's a kind of index of our pages dealing with unfiled taxes, and it's simply titled Haven't Filed Taxes in a While. Links to 8 different articles on the blog post. It's a real useful resource for people who are just starting out to figure out where they might go as far as thinking about their unfiled taxes and back tax issues. If you need to reach us one last time, 1-888-282-4697, or you can email us through that website, watax.com, and just go to the contact page and we will be there to help you out. Thanks again for joining us, and we will talk to you again some other time.
Hey,